talking about solidarity and looking at different ways that communities can connect and collaborate, particularly in organising resisting against white supremacy and white nationalism. So what is solidarity to you?
Solidarity is about me seeing your humanity and you seeing mine. Solidarity is about me accepting that you're not going to believe what I believe about everything, and I'm not going to believe what you believe, but that we can still work together on some common things. Solidarity is about accepting that I don't like things that you do, but you get to do them, and you don't like some of the things that I do, and I get to do them. But that we talk about how everyone can live in dignity. Solidarity is about standing alongside other people in their struggles. So it's not just about thinking about what your own community is facing, but looking at what other communities are facing. I remember one of the marches in Auckland, and there was this big banner that said Asians for Tino Rangatiratanga, and I thought, wow, I want to be there, I want to be holding that banner, that's so cool. But I think that even with marginalised communities, we sort of institutionalise, or we get this internalised racism that we absorb towards each other, and we even think of each other in derogatory terms and speak of each other in derogatory terms. And, you know, that solidarity is overcoming all of that and saying, actually, a lot of the stuff we face is so similar, and how can we work together and support each other for the various issues that we face.
You know, we've seen the rise of white nationalism and in particular white supremacy around the world. How do you see that in the context of Aotearoa New Zealand?
So we've always had white supremacists here, and obviously if you look at the history of colonisation and the history of political power in this country, you know, in immigration policies and other policies, education policies, we know that a lot of white supremacist thinking in terms of thinking of other races is not as good, or needing to wipe them out in terms of their cultural practices, their language, as happened with tangata whenua. That was all happening. So we've already had that history, but it kind of progressed, I guess, through the 70s and 80s. We saw other voices coming out stronger, other processes taking place, but this extreme element of far-right thinking didn't get much traction here. Like, they were here and they were doing their thing, but everyone kind of ignored them and laughed at them and didn't take them seriously for a long time. But over the last 5 years, I think it's been a mistake to treat them like that. The world was changing, and we could see that. We could see the impact on social media and the way that marginalised people were attacked and silenced on social media, and the targeted approach that they had towards pushing out their rhetoric, and the use of free speech arguments to push out ever more increasingly hateful messages was really a concern. But then we could see also overseas the kind of violence and killings and mass killings that were happening in the US, in Canada and other places, death of an MP in UK, that we could see quite clearly that what they were doing was leading to straight out violence. And our community and our organisation definitely was raising that with government.
Yeah. How do they manage to hide in plain sight?
Well, they didn't even bother hiding. So we had those 2 Canadian provocateurs here last year. They were trained to get media attention because that's how these guys earn their money. So they weren't here to debate ideas. There was no point in trying to debate them because they were not interested in facts or having their minds changed. They were here to make money and to gain an audience. And our media followed them around. And the Sunday program gave them a platform where they could present a sanitised version of themselves. People that give the more far-end extreme right views are getting a lot of media coverage. So people like Dr. Brash, for example, Stephen Franks, and those sorts of people, you'll see them regularly on media, and when they're on media, they present a kind of acceptable face. But, you know, interesting when I was in a green room with Stephen Franks, and he was talking about how we have to save our children from the Chinese, and I'm not kidding you, and how the Chinese think that they're a superior race, and so on, and he was justifying eugenics to me. He doesn't say, you don't hear that on the news media, like when the camera's rolling, he's not saying those things, so they can appear in our media very widely without giving the true extent of their views, but it gives them the profile so that when they get speaking engagements or, you know, other activities, they find the spaces to give out those views that can be extremely harmful. And again, you know, debating them doesn't work because, one, as a marginalised person, why should I have to debate my own humanity? You know, why should I have to debate that I have the right to exist and the right to believe and the right to practice my beliefs, or, you know, the right to have a culture and practice that? Those things are not debatable issues, and you can never win that debate because with every community there's good and bad. Like, imagine if I took your life and pulled out all the worst bits of it and threw that around and said, this is who he is, look at what he's done, without...
What he's wearing, it's the 80s.
Yeah, and look, yeah, and what impression can anyone have of you? I remember going to a speech at the University of Waikato. There was a international speaker that they brought in, and we had heard about it, so we turned up because it was a public venue, and they were very shocked. It was meant to be like a closed lecture. And I sat and listened to this guy for over an hour spewing hate about my community, and it was like, sitting there, I was like, if this is all I ever got to hear, I'd hate me too, you know? And we didn't get a chance to counter it. They didn't allow questions. He left, they shut the meeting down, and that was it. And so all those people, and that hall was packed, would have gone out to their workplaces. There would have been teachers, there would have been house staff, there would have been retail workers, all these people out in the community now having these thoughts and never having them counted. And that was just a lecture. This is happening on social media all the time, and the way that algorithms work and the way social media works, this is all they get to hear. And if that was all you heard, why wouldn't you hate?
Yeah. Do you think, when I think about those Canadians you were talking about, and some of, like, and the Don Brashes and the Stephen Franks and stuff like that, I sometimes feel that the white majority of people in this country find that acceptable because they look like them. You know, if you look at the new rising alt-right, I mean, they could be on. They look like the cast of Home and Away. They look like them. They sound like them. Yet they're espousing these very negative and very racist point of views and perspectives. And I don't know. That kind of seems to be the way that they are able to sort of fly under the radar, if you like. There is kind of a growing awareness in the media about racism, particularly after what happened in Christchurch. Do you see a kind of a progressive trajectory, or in terms of the way that, you know, these issues are starting to come up, or is it 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing?
So in the immediate aftermath of Christchurch, they did a great job of giving a voice to the Muslim community. I think they did that really well. I'm quite happy about, you know, the 6 major media companies coming to an agreement as to how they were going to cover the trial. I know there's been some complaints about that, but I think that was really sensible, and I'm glad that they've gone in that direction. And I have challenged them. You know, I challenged them at the Hamilton Press Club lunch in terms of how they allow issues to be debated and how issues of racism and racist speech immediately get turned into a free speech argument, and who gets to dominate that space? Like, who gets to dominate the argument? And it's invariably, you know, you've got your Bryce Edwards, your Stephen Franks, your Don Brash, you know, your various people that they, Graham Edgeler, that they keep going to. And what do you notice about all of those people? That they don't suffer the consequences of hate speech, that they're not having this lived experience. But also, that these people are able to direct the whole discussion to freedom of speech as if it's the only issue. Now, we have a Bill of Rights. Right to life is an issue. Freedom from discrimination is an issue. Freedom to practice or not practice a religious belief is, you know, all of those freedoms are equally as important as freedom to speech, but they never are allowed to enter the debate. Yeah. And you have to wonder, you know, why are we allowing that to happen? And it's happening because certain voices are privileged over others.
We talked with some other folks as well, talking about like moments of inspiration and moments of solidarity, particularly when POC communities work together. Are there any moments that you can think of which inspire you in terms of the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, just immediately the aftermath of the Christchurch attacks, and we just had all sorts of people pouring into the mosques, like just for days and days, just constant streams of visitors. And in Hamilton, we got the mongrel mob, and they came. And the first Friday prayer after the attack, so it was 1 week after. And I walked from my workplace to the mosque because that was easiest, and I was crossing the Whitiora Bridge in Hamilton, and these guys come driving past to go to the mosque because they had already announced they were coming. And so they're turning away, and they've got the bikes and the cars, and they're like, and I'm like, yeah! I'm like, oh! And then we had our Friday prayers, and then we come out, and these guys did a haka.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like incredibly powerful. And then there was a park across the road, and so we all went there, and the Muslim community were like, oh, can I take a photo with you? And these guys just like were treated with so much love and respect, and I thought, wow, that's something that possibly they don't get a lot of when they go around. And I know they do some awful things. Some of these guys are pretty terrible, but if they could come to our community and offer solidarity like that, and our community could accept that, you know, that's inspirational to me. Yeah. I think that's really important. And even with people that we know have perhaps hurt others or whatever, there's still a place to try and get acceptance and love, and through that change will come, you know. Yeah. So that to me was a really, really powerful example. I've been working on this initiative called the Inclusive Aotearoa Collective, and so my first thought is that we have a lot of people in this country doing some very good work in the space around racism and around bringing communities together. And I see people across the board in cities and, you know, putting in local initiatives. I see marginalised communities working within their own space to try and educate and be activists. But there's no coordination of those efforts, right? We don't have any kind of strategic overview. We don't collaborate well across communities. We're not bringing it all together. And so that's what this initiative is about, developing a national strategy for diversity and inclusion that is grassroots, that is coming up from communities, and every community getting to say, this is what we need in order to be able to live with dignity.